You're listening to a Roddenberry Podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. We'll have more news this evening, but first...
The latest Gene-ology, a Roddenberry Podcast.
Episode 76, Law and Order. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Earl Green.
And I'm Ashley Thomas.
Each week on Gene-ology, we take a look at the early work of Gene Roddenberry to see if he's laid down the law on his morals, meanings, and messages in his earliest TV work.
Dum dum.
Now I feel like that was completely out of order.
Bow, 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 bow. All right, but before we call this episode of Gene-ology to order, let me take a brief moment to encourage you to join our Patreon or follow us on YouTube or leave a review wherever you're listening to us. Patreon is your gateway to all things Mission Log, including exclusive access to the unedited version of our show and our private Discord where you can interact with us, your hosts, Earl and me, during scheduled live chats. Folks, by the way, if you're listening to the VAM right now and you have not made it to Gene-ology After Dark, please join us if you can. We always have a great time doing our scheduled live chat. And you know what? Sometimes we get to do occasional screenings as well. You can access all of this for just a mere $1 a month, but you can always give more. We're not mad about that. So head over to patreon.com/missionlog to see what tier works for you and join the conversation. By the way, reviews really do help our show way more than you can possibly imagine. Even if you can't come up with the words for a written review, a 5-star rating wherever you get the show really goes a long way to tell the algorithm that you really love us and you think other people might love us too. We are counting on our loyal genealogists to help us spread the word. Earl, this week's trivia, what have you put in order for us?
Oh, there's a lot of trivia, so we're going to open that docket right now. The creation of Walter B. Newman, a member in good standing of the Mystery Writers of America, Jefferson Drum is a Western with an interesting twist. The hero of the piece isn't a gunman, though he can certainly throw a punch or handle a firearm. He isn't a wrangler or a cowboy. He's a newspaper editor looking to start a new life for himself and his young son. Gene wrote 4 episodes of Jefferson Drum during his time at Screen Gems, starting with the third one shown, Law and Order. But here's the funny thing. Jefferson Drum started out as an episode of another series. In the mid-1950s, first CBS and then NBC aired an anthology show called The Web, whose works were all written by members of the Mystery Writers of America. The Web wasn't locked into any particular genre or time period. It simply set out to tell tales that would keep the audience guessing. And the very last episode of The Web in October 1957 was originally titled Man with a Choice. And when it re-aired in April 1958 as the series premiere of Jefferson Drum, it was retitled Arrival. The series itself almost had a very different name, as the series pitch carried the title The Gun and the Quill, until it was decided to simply name the show after its main character. And yes, Jefferson Drum was another mid-season replacement show, though the show it replaced on NBC's primetime schedule, Court of Last Resort, was not coming back. By inheriting that fairly unique time slot without a lot of competition, Jefferson Drum managed to last 2 seasons that probably seemed very short to a 1958-59 audience, but would seem like long seasons to us now in the age of streaming. And now, wait a minute, 1958 and 59? Yes, we are winding back the clock here. This is work that predates Wrangler, the first series Gene created while at Screen Gems, and was slotted in between Gene's assignments on Boots and Saddles and the first season of Have Gun Will Travel. Some time back, we mentioned this show and said we would probably have to skip it for lack of either shows or scripts. But, fortunately, not a very long time ago, the scripts for all 4 of Gene's episodes were found in the Roddenberry archive, so we are taking a moment to step out of our roughly chronological order to make sure we cover as many of the gaps as we can. Law and Order, the first of Gene's episodes to air, the 3rd episode of the series, premiered on May 9th, 1958. Other than 2 or 3 episodes floating around the internet, Jefferson Drum may be in the lost media category, and we are working from 2 drafts of the script. The first draft, dated March 12, 1958, and a final draft dated just 5 days later, on March 17, 1958. Starring as Jefferson Drum was actor Jeff Richards, whose promising baseball career was put on hold by World War II. He served as a radio technician in the U.S. Navy, returning to Little League farm team in Portland after he was discharged in 1946. An injury put Jeff on the bench, and he decided to try acting instead, serving out contracts at various studios including Paramount, Warner's, and MGM, where he appeared in such movies as 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, The Island of Lost Women, and The Opposite Sex, all in the 50s. After his MGM stint, he found work on the small screen, making his first appearance on the web as Jefferson Drum, which then became a starring role for him. Jeff Richards transitioned from on-screen roles to behind the scenes in the 1960s, concentrating largely on set construction. We lost Jeff in 1989. 3 other actors got starring credit in every episode of Jefferson Drum, and we'll tell their stories one by one as we go through Gene's 4 scripts for this series. Guest starring as Krieger in this episode is venerable character actor R.G. Armstrong, who our audience will probably know best from his many film appearances: Predator, Children of the Corn. He was Pruneface in Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy movie. He was Uncle Lewis in 6 episodes of Friday the 13th, the series. And his TV appearances are legion. He often ended up playing tough guys, which means that the casting director who placed him in this episode understood the assignment. R.G. Armstrong died in 2012. Law & Order was directed by Jerry Hopper, a very busy film and TV director who had gotten his start as a film editor at Paramount. His already burgeoning career behind the camera for films went into overdrive when television production kicked in, and he directed many episodes of such classic shows as the pilot of Leave It to Beaver, The Rifleman, Wagon Train, Burke's Law, The Fugitive, Gilligan's Island, It's About Time, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and Get Smart. Jerry would direct 2 more Gene scripts in the final season of Have Gun Will Travel in 1962. His final directing credit? The pilot episode of the new Leave It to Beaver in 1987. Jerry Hopper died a year later in 1988. Another thing that makes Jefferson Drum unique is the company to which Screen Gems farmed out the actual production of the series. Jefferson Drum was a very rare example of an attempt at a dramatic series from Goodson Todman Productions, an outfit much better known for a long-running string of hit game shows, including The Price is Right, The Match Game, What's My Line, Password, and Family Feud, all brainchildren of production executive Mark Goodson. Sadly, Jefferson Drum had one thing in common with virtually all of the attempts to branch Goodson Todman Productions out from making game shows. None of their westerns or sitcoms or anthologies placed high enough in the ratings to last very long. Jefferson Drum's first season found it getting trampled by Trackdown on CBS and Jim Bowie on ABC, both westerns with established audiences unlikely to skip their favorites to sample a news show. NBC relocated it on the schedule to Thursday nights. This was even worse. Jefferson Drum was now getting wiped off the map by massive hits on the other networks, up against I Love Lucy on CBS and Leave It to Beaver on ABC. The end result? I don't have to explain either of those shows to you. You know what they are. They're cultural touchstones even today. Whereas there's a fairly good chance that this podcast is the first time you have ever heard of Jefferson Drum.
Thou shalt not kill. They didn't fight. They went right on worshiping their own way, even though they knew Caesar would...
Jeff, listen.
Office is closed, gentlemen.
Jeff, we gotta talk to you. What are you doing with that?
We're doing what we do every week, what we'll keep doing every week, in our own way, the best way we know how, till someone builds a church in this town.
That's just being stubborn. Krieger says everybody's got to come to his services.
If you really want to take a stand against Krieger, something important, then we're with you. That's what we came by to say.
Something important. Like saloon hours? Or lawmen paying for The new black suits they wear?
The man's loco, Jeff. Folks is afraid to come out on the street. Afraid to talk to each other.
You mean maybe we shouldn't have given up our guns?
You got an obligation. Town's only paper and all.
I'm not the town's conscience, Hickey. My business is news, not pulling chestnuts out of the fire. You got exactly what you wanted. Perfect order. Everyone act alike, think alike, punish those who don't. You got a good taste of it. And if you want out, you'll have to do it the same way you got in. Together.
Very good, Mr. Drum. That happens to be the sermon for today. Perfect order.
Krieger's version.
I told you I saw them come in here.
And what would Caesar do without a Judas?
I'm looking for my boy, and if he's with that girl Nora, I'll take care of him good.
10 o'clock, gentlemen. Anyone late for services will be punished, including Mr. Drum. You can start the singing. I'll find those two.
Krieger, we hired you, all of us together. I vote for firing Krieger.
Any other votes for Sand? Then I believe I said it was 10 o'clock.
Jefferson Drum, newspaperman with a passion for truth-telling and honest journalism, sets up shop in a small western town. Jefferson is a widower with a young son, and his commitment to the truth and justice brings him his fair share of adventures in the Wild West. Prologue. It's a hot day, and an old-timer is at his work, building a coffin. The body he's building it for is on the ground under a blanket. Lucius Coyne, the printer, rides up in his one-horse rig, headed towards the newspaper office. Jefferson Drum steps out of the office and inspects the bundles of printing paper stacked in the rig. Lucius reaches further into the rig and pulls out a revolver and a book, handing them to Jeff. Lucius tells him how the gunsmith fixed up the revolver for him and about the new book he picked up, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He picked it up for Jeff's son, Joey. The paper quality is a bit lagging this time around, though. Sulfur paper. It'll have to do. The paper must go to press. All the while, the persistent sound of a hammer has finally come to a stop. Lucius asks who the coffin's for. Young Willis, says Jeff. And who do we think? Asks Lucius. A new man, Krieger. So obviously Willis picked a fight with him, and he chose poorly. But this Krieger isn't a gunslinger. He's a lawman, or used to be. He did some housekeeping in a couple of towns in Nevada, based on what Jeff had heard. Some of the shopkeepers are having a meeting about keeping Krieger around. They could use the law around here. Jeff's going to have a look into it now that Lucius is back. He makes his way across the street where the old-timer is putting the final nail in the coffin. How come everybody gets killed in high summer? Midday high summer? Why? The old-timer laments. He puts down the hammer and lays a hand over his heart in mock piety. For the late lamented, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, if a bullet don't get you, the high living must. The town loafers give a chuckle at the rhyme, including Jeff, but the laughter suddenly dies off as quickly as young Willis did. Krieger has entered the scene. Krieger's a tall, gaunt, hollow-faced man with the burning eyes of a zealot. In his 40s and looking like a fire and brimstone preacher, save for his travel-stained clothing and sawed-off double-barrel shotgun. Behind him are Big Ed, the saloon-keeper, Lee Hickey, the general store owner, and the owner of the mine, Stoker, and a couple other businessmen. Do I hear lips mocking Jehovah's handiwork? Krieger asks. Jeff responds, I've heard visitors condemn this town's accommodations, but never its humor. Krieger says that he hopes that Jeff's paper gives more respect to the dead than he's currently showing. But Jeff refuses to be cowed by Krieger, saying, why concern ourselves with death? It's the dying that's alarming. But Krieger stares Jeff down. I was thinking of another quotation, he says. Levity is the cousin of evil. Laughter the first step on the road to sin. Would you mind if I prayed over this body? Jeff speaks quietly. I think that's fitting. You killed him. Act 1. Krieger removes his hat and bows his head, as do his entourage of businessmen and then, slowly, the rest of the onlookers. That is, everyone but Jeff, who is looking on curiously. Krieger prays, "O Lord, here lies a sinner, cut down by vengeance." Krieger punctuates his sentence with a thump on the coffin with the butt of his shotgun. A vessel of clay shattered by thy terrible wrath, O Lord, we tremble at thy justice. Let fear cleanse our minds, give strength to thy servant's voice. Another thump on the coffin. Let this arm be as thy right arm, reflecting the fury and wrath of thy perfect order. Thump. Amen. Now I call that a prayer, Stoker proclaims. Keir asks Jeff for his thoughts of the services. Jeff notes the distinct lack of mercy. Hickey and several other onlookers move the coffin onto the wagon to be taken for burial. Stoker asks Jeff for his opinion on the town's new lawman. Oh, the decision's already been made then? I'd like to get to know him a little better before... Stoker interrupts. Krieger's a God-fearing man who can handle a gun. We could look till glory day and not beat that combo. There's a murmur of agreement in the crowd. Jeff looks to Big Ed quizzically, but Ed only shrugs, then talks about the expense he's taken to furnish his saloon and how a fight last Saturday broke an expensive $100 mirror. And with that, he mumbles off. Stoker then lets Jeff know that it won't be official until the marshal passes through next month to deputize him. Jeff asks, why can't we wait until then? But Stoker and Hickey have already made up their minds for the whole town. Don't you want a decent town to raise your boy in, Jeff? Stoker iterates further. You don't want him running wild like my boy at 20. Jeff speaks in defense of young Jimmy Stoker, but his father won't hear it. Nothing wrong with Jimmy that a razor strop can't fix. Krieger further emphasizes that while he and Jeff may disagree on a few principles, he surely wants order in town as much as the next businessman. Jeff hesitantly nods, but then warns Krieger that he's probably just incurred the wrath of Willis's brother. But Krieger doesn't care. He's willing to risk his life for the town. Will Jeff risk $1 a month to keep him? Stoker says that all the mine owners are chipping in. It's not much of a salary, Jeff points out. Krieger simply replies, the Lord pays me. Jeff is still hesitant, but Stoker pressures him further. We've already made up our minds. Are you with us or against us? Jeff shrugs, agrees, and walks off towards the bar. As he exits, Stoker tells Krieger that Jeff's a good man and he'll have his support. Krieger agrees as he watches Jeff walk off. At the saloon, young Jimmy Stoker is sitting close to Nora, the saloon waitress, both laughing. Jeff enters and moves towards the bar, ordering a beer from Big Ed. Big Ed nods towards Jimmy and Nora, noting the fireworks that will erupt if the elder Stoker enters the bar and sees Jimmy with the waitress. Jeff walks towards the pair, Jimmy having just taken Nora's hand. Jeff greets them, and Jimmy drops it like it's hot. Nora's hand, that is. Jimmy acts like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He's old enough to have a beer, Jeff, but Jeff says that he just wants to thank him for the mud ball gun he made for Joey. Jimmy relaxes a bit, realizing that Jeff isn't there to rat him out to his father. Jimmy replies that he used to make them for himself when he was a kid. That was a long, long time ago, by the way, Nora. Jeff tells Jimmy he should pound that beer and scoot. Jeff's dad's on the way. Jimmy starts to say how he's not worried about him, but then thinks better of it. He thanks Jeff, finishes his beer, and bids Nora farewell. Ed advises Nora that she best leave Jimmy be, but she counters, saying that a boy his age needs a girl to talk to. Buy me a drink? Jeff nods and Ed pours. Nora downs her drink and then goes to put an arm around one of the poker players. Ed asks Jeff's opinion on Krieger. Jeff only remarks that he seems to be handy with a gun. Ed thinks that the town could use more order. Stoker says it'll bring more people, and more people means more business for everyone. You too, Jeff. Simply a matter of good economics then, huh? Asks Jeff. Stoker enters and tells Ed that drinks are on him. But he's not alone. Krieger is with him, along with Hickey and some other onlookers from earlier. Stoker asks Krieger for his drink of choice, but Krieger simply replies that he doesn't partake when he's working. And he always seems to be working as he peers around the room. Stoker tells Jeff and Ed that Krieger has already caught Lou Halfley racing his buckboard down the street. Who knows? He could have run someone down if Krieger hadn't done it. The poker player approaches the bar and orders a drink for himself and Nora, but Krieger's not hearing it. "Get out," he says coldly. "You've had enough." Ed objects, but Krieger says that drunks create trouble, and remember, you want to keep your place open, right? Ed is now shocked that this man he supported may cost him sales. The drunk poker player is starting to get angry and threatens Krieger with a swift kick or 5. Krieger hits the poker player in the kneecap with the butt of his gun, grabs him by the collar, and forcibly tosses him from the saloon. The other poker players have taken to their feet, but Krieger whirls around, training his shotgun on them. "Any objections, gentlemen?" he asks. The poker table sits back down, but Nora, with more stones than any other man in the room, says, "Well, I've got some. He was buying me a drink." Krieger trains a long and piercing glare on her, looking her up and down. Nora's anger turns to discomfort and then fear as he does so. Jeff is disturbed at the whole scene. Nora turns and says, "Well, what's one drink anyway?" Krieger shouts, "Girl, what's your name?" Nora tells him, albeit reluctantly, but it's not her real name. Krieger then asks her age. 25? Krieger asks what she does for a living. Nora's jaw drops, and a man along the bar laughs at the question, but is silenced with a look from Krieger. "I'm a waitress. I help Big Ed around the bar." He then asks for Nora's hand. She hesitates, frightened, and Krieger's eyes burn into her. Jeff comes to her defense. "Nora's not hurting anyone, Krieger. She's not a law problem." Krieger responds by pointing his shotgun almost absent-mindedly at Jeff. "I'll decide what's my business, Mr. Drum." Krieger then grabs Nora's hand, hard, rubbing it. Soft. This isn't a hand of a hard worker. He gives Nora a dirty look and quotes, "A beautiful, virtuous woman is the perfect workmanship of God, the true glory of angels." Nora tries to pull her hand away, but he continues, "The ancients used to flog the other kind. If you're as soft as your hands, girl," he squeezed her hand tighter, "you wouldn't want a whip taken to it." The scene is interrupted when the coffin-making old-timer enters the saloon, proclaiming that Willis's brother is heading into town, wearing a gun. Big Ed removes the new mirrors from the wall. Hickey tells Jeff that Joey was playing in the street. Jeff takes off for the street, and Krieger checks the ammo in his gun. Krieger informs Hickey that he'll be making his office at his general store and tells the bar that if Willis comes to the saloon looking for him, that'll be where he can find him. And with that, they exit the bar. Jeff spots Joey sitting on the steps of the newspaper office, rolling up a mud ball for his new gun. Tom Sawyer sitting open next to him. Jeff gathers up his son and moves him and the book indoors, saying that Lucius needs some help inside. Lucius pops his head out, and Jeff repeats, "You need Joey's help, don't you? In the back. Low." Lucius is a bit confused until he takes in the empty street. "Oh, yes, come on." But Joey's picked up on the situation. "There's going to be another shooting, isn't there?" "Get," says Jeff as the two hurriedly move to the back. Big Ed and Stoker move down the street to join Jeff. Ed remarks how he figured that Krieger would go slow until he's been made official, but he's nervous about how quickly he's taking over. Stoker simply remarks that Ed only feels that way because Krieger threatened to shut him down, and as for Nora, Krieger's a man who knows sin when he sees it. Jeff says he'd feel better if Krieger talked about statutes, not wickedness. But Stoker objects and says that it sounds like Jeff is speaking for sin. Jeff then asks, by whose definition? Yours? Ed's? Mine? Anything Krieger doesn't like? But before he can answer, a Willis Brothers mine wagon rides up. The driver has a gun buckled to his hip and stops for another man to exit the wagon. Ed thinks there might not be trouble. Tim Willis is not like his brother. Stoker thinks that Willis better get back to the mine if he knows what's good for him. Ed looks towards Hickey's store and spots Krieger in the window. But Tim's not waving his gun. Maybe he just wants to talk, points out Jeff. Ed agrees. He knows his brother's made a lot of trouble. Tim walks down the street, not in a threatening manner, taking in the odd scene of desertion. He turns towards Hickey's store and stops suddenly, taking in the sight from the window. Without warning, Krieger breaks the window with his gun barrel and fires. Tom Willis hits the ground dead. A crowd begins to form in the commotion, and Ed and Stoker take off down the street, but Jeff stands there in shock. He's just witnessed a murder. Krieger emerges from the store and the crowd parts for him, making his way to the body. "The wages of the unrighteous, Mr. Drum. Put that in your paper," Krieger says, gesturing towards the body. Jeff emerges from his shock. "You're a coward, Krieger. You fired a shotgun at a man who didn't even draw his gun." The crowd tenses. "I never give evil an even chance. That's the secret of stamping it out. Effective right now, there'll be only one gun carried in town. Mine. And we'll start with yours, Mr. Drum." And he quickly grabs Jefferson's gun from the waistband. Jeff makes to grab his gun back, but is met with Krieger's shotgun to his belly. Krieger then notes the book still under Jeff's arm and begins to chide him about spending too much time on books and not enough time on meditation. Jeff remarks, "Tom Sawyer? I guess it is sort of a glossary on evil. Tricked others into doing his work, tried to deceive his poor aunt, loved idleness. Probably a free thinker," says Krieger. "Just free," says Jeff. "Maybe you're good for this town. You'll teach them what that's worth." And with that, Jeff turns and walks back toward the newspaper office. Act 2. Krieger is tacking a sign to the door of the saloon. "Closed Sundays," it reads. Krieger is now decked out in a severe black suit, new from top to bottom, and black boots and equally black hat. Big Ed is dressed in his Sunday best, and it looks like he'd be much more comfortable in his Saturday worst. Krieger then turns authoritatively to Ed. "Where's Nora?" Ed says he doesn't know, but Krieger persists. He told her he wanted to talk to her last night. Ed then asks why he won't just let Nora leave town. She wants to anyway. She's afraid of him. Krieger angrily says she has a great deal to fear. She's an evil woman. Ed says that Krieger should just let her leave. Krieger rounds on him. "It's places like yours that foment evil in women. Be thankful I close your doors only on this day. Service is at 10. I'll expect you there." Krieger then turns and heads down the street. As soon as he's out of sight, Ed makes his way to the newspaper office. He's joined by Hickey, also wearing his Sunday best and looking like he'd rather be in his Saturday worst. Ed remarks on Hickey's go-to-meeting get-up, but Hickey only says he'd rather do that than get what Krieger gave Lou Halfley. When Ed asks how Lou's feeling, Hickey says, "Like you'd feel with your teeth knocked out with a gun butt." They pause, and Ed says, "I'm going to talk to Jeff. Somebody's got to do something." They enter the newspaper office and see what appears to be the Sunday tradition. Jeff is seated at his desk, reading from the Bible with Joey, while Lucius sits a bit further back, puffing on his pipe. Jeff's gotten to the part where Jesus tells the disciples to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. Jeff explains that the people of Israel were willing to pay taxes and abide by Roman law, but it became a different issue when Rome tried to tell them how to worship God. "What did they do when that happened, Joey?" "They fought," Joey replies. Jeff corrects him. Scripture says, "Thou shalt not kill," and they didn't fight. They went on worshiping God in their own way, even though they knew Caesar would. But before he can finish, he's interrupted by Ed and Hickey. Jeff tells them that the office is closed today, but Ed asks what he's doing with the Bible. Jeff says this is simply what they'll do every week until there's a proper church in town. Hickey informs him that Krieger says everyone must come to his service. Ed says, "If you really want to take a stand against Krieger, something important, then we're with you." That's what we came by to say. Jeff scoffs at them. "You mean like saloon hours or lawmen paying for new black suits they wear?" Ed persists. He's plumb loco, and folks are afraid to come out into the streets, afraid to even talk to each other. "Well, maybe we shouldn't have given him our guns then," he responds. But Hickey insists that Jeff's got an obligation to the town. He's the only paper. But Jeff is furious. He can't be the town's conscience. News is his business, not pulling everyone's chestnuts out of the fire. Now he's really fuming. You've got exactly what you wanted. Perfect order. Everyone act alike, think alike, punish those who don't. You've got a good taste of it, and if you want out, you'll have to do it the same way you got in. Together. Jeff's speech is met with applause, but not from Ed or Hickey. Krieger has entered the scene. Just so happens that's the sermon for today. Perfect order, he says. Krieger's version. Jeff scoffs. Told you I saw them come in here, says Stoker, pointing at Ed and Hickey. And where would Caesar be without Judas, says Jeff. Krieger looks at his watch. 10 o'clock. Time for services. Anyone late for services will be punished, including Mr. Drum. He tells Stoker to get the singing started. He'll find Jimmy and Nora. Jeff shouts at Krieger. They hired him together. They'll fire him too. He votes to relieve Krieger of his duties. Jeff turns to Hickey and Ed, but they are looking sheepish and scared. Any other votes for sin? Says Krieger. Silence. Then I believe I said 10 o'clock. Ed and Hickey exit the office with Krieger smiling behind them. Jeff turns to his son. That's the lesson for today, Joey. You may not understand now, but I hope you will when you grow up. Since there's not a proper church, the congregation has formed on the steps in front of Big Ed's saloon. It's not a joyful gathering. Stoker ascends the steps and calls everyone to order. As they don't have a proper church yet, there's no reason they can't act like they're in one. The crowd is still uneasy, but Stoker shouts them down. He calls the man that Krieger forced out of the bar, totally sober today, up the stairs. Krieger has chosen him to lead the hymns. He unenthusiastically proceeds. Back at the newspaper office, Jeff hears the sound of bringing in the sheaves from down the street. Good song for a town to sing together, comments Lucius. If they want to, says Jeff coldly. Lucius keeps his eye on Jeff. What are you going to do about Krieger? Jeff angrily asks why it's his responsibility. He's a newspaper man, not your brother's keeper, asks Lucius. Jeff is silenced at this statement. They're interrupted by the sound of a woman's scream from outside. Krieger is dragging Nora down the street with one hand and holding his gun and a mule whip in the other. Jeff tells Lucius to keep Joey inside, and he takes off after Krieger. Krieger has dragged Nora to the top of the steps at Big Ed's place and tied her hands to a post. He's passed his shotgun on to Stoker, who looks just as surprised to be holding it as to the scene in front of him. Krieger found Nora with young Jimmy Stoker. He was helping her to leave town, he informs the senior Stoker. But Jimmy won't give him any more trouble. He got a beating to remember. He then turns to Nora and picks up the whip. I gave you every chance. A sinful woman, yet I treated you like a father. Nora lets loose a hysterical laugh. Krieger raises the whip to silence her, but Jeff steps in and grabs the whip in midair. Hold it! Krieger spins and lashes out at Jeff, landing a punch. Jeff takes it, but not before giving Krieger a blow across the face that sends him reeling back. Jeff runs to Nora and starts to loosen her tie. Ed hollers for Jeff to look out. Krieger's back on his feet, fuming, and grabbed the dropped whip. Jeff tells Ed to let Nora loose. Jeff's on the defense, taking each whip crack from Krieger. Desecrator! Blasphemer! Lucifer! Jeff finally manages to crack the whip, ripping it from Krieger's hands. He and Krieger are sprawling now. Tremble at his vengeance! His servant hath the strength of 100. His true servants have that strength, says Jeff, as he sidesteps Krieger and sends a fist into the rushing Krieger's stomach. He beats Krieger back into the wall of the saloon. The dumbfounded Stoker is still holding the shotgun as Krieger lands into him. Krieger seizes the opportunity and the gun. Training the gun on Jeff, he says, I'm a merciful man. I'll give you time to pray. Make your peace, Mr. Drum. The crowd has scattered, taking shelter where they can, leaving only Jeff and Krieger on the porch. He clicks the hammer into place and points the gun square at Jeff's chest. Krieger! Shouts young Jimmy Stoker. Jimmy is armed with a pistol and it's trained on Krieger. I didn't mind that beating. I got it as bad at home. This is for Nora. Krieger hits the dirt and fires a shot as Jimmy fires his. Jimmy's on the ground, sprawled in the dirt, dead. The other barrel is for you, Mr. Drum. But before he can fire, another shot rings out. Hickey has fired from his store window, dropping Krieger where he stands, and then runs out to see his son. Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy. Later, the old-timer is making another coffin. He's on his second for today. Jeff enters the scene from the office, making his way past him towards the saloon. What'll it be, Jeff? Big Ed asks as Jeff sits down. A beer. Nora's got her arm around another poker player. As Ed pours, Nora asks, Who's going to buy me a drink? Jeff eyes her curiously. What do you want me to do? Cry the rest of my life? Suppose not. Jeff throws a coin on the table, then raises his own glass to no one in particular. Cheers. The end.
Well done, Ashley. You whipped that town and that recap into shape.
I hope I whipped it good.
Yeah, boy, it seems to be a recurring theme.
There was a lot of whiplash in this one, though not of the same variety as we are previously used to.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a bit of a recurring thing, but hey, maybe that's just the Old West.
Yeah, whips and guns.
I found it kind of fascinating that in the script that we have, Gene wrote the trailer for the episode, picking scenes from the show. That was kind of fascinating because the question of whose job it is to write that is something that has evolved over decades. I mean, throughout the history of scripted TV. So it's kind of interesting to get a peek into a point in the industry where it was, hey, you wrote the episode, you write the trailer.
Yeah, I don't remember that happening really in some of the other scripts that we've read. But yeah, I thought that was really cool that this is how he is framing that episode. It called me back to the certain episodes of Have Gun Will Travel where you get the one line. I thought that was really interesting, but it kind of frames like, it gives you a little teaser of, oh, something exciting is happening in this episode of Jefferson Drum today. But also like it almost establishes like a thesis statement for how you should perceive the episode. It's like, it's like giving, it's in this case, it's the author giving us what is your intent. So. Yeah.
Very, very cool little glimpse of something I don't think we have run into that at all in the previous scripts we've had.
Not really, no.
Okay, diversifying industries is fine. It's a good idea. I have questions about the general store also basically being the funeral home in this town. It's like, oh no, do we see more people going into this place than coming out? The meat's cheap, so we're not going to ask.
Well, I'm sorry. Who's the proprietor? It's not Stoker, or Hickey. It's Sweeney Todd. Oh my gosh!
It's people. You've got to tell them it's people.
Yeah. I don't know who is this old timer, because he's only identified in the script as old timer.
Old timer, yeah.
Old timer is the only man in town who knows how to make coffins, and he does it in the middle of the street. I guess he's just got to line it up next to the body wherever it landed, but
he apparently needs to teach that skill to an apprentice, because if we're dropping 2 people a day, he's going to get overwhelmed.
Yeah. Somebody's got to be out there like getting the 2x4s together to put together these pine boxes, but good grief.
This is more of a general observation about the series as a whole and just the setup of the story. It occurred to me going into this that my previously stated rule of classic TV that I've talked about in the past, this holds true for Jefferson Drum. The medium favors single fathers because you can show them as the wise and effective head of the household, but they can also, get some action or at least some romance as the show progresses. So I can only assume that at some point in the future of this show, it may not be a Gene script. It may be someone else's script. Some lady is going to breeze into town and bang the drum.
Hey, listen, have you looked at pictures of this man? Good grief. I'm forgetting the actor's name, but he played, Ben Pontopee in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, the second oldest brother. I didn't recognize him immediately without the red hair. And unfortunately, we don't have video of this particular script that we covered today, but, Earl, you have been able to rustle up some episodes of Jefferson Drum.
3 whole episodes. And yeah, Jeff Richards is...
Jeff Richards, thank you.
He is, he's a handsome fellow. He was in the studio contract player days. He was kind of singled out as especially promising.
Mm.
But then they don't really necessarily give him a huge amount to do.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, the man is extremely handsome. Like, he is looking extremely makey-outy tonight. Why every woman in this town is not, like, fawning all over him is beyond my comprehension. So I'm just like, what is this? It's good that we don't have video of this, Earl. All I would have said is Jefferson Drum is extremely makey-outy tonight, and that would have been the whole recap.
The whole show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, are there any women in town other than Nora?
She is the only one with a name.
And it's apparently not even her real name.
Yeah.
So. That's, there's a lot going on there. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that when I have a feeling we'll get there when we're dealing less with funsies.
Mm.
There's a minor difference between the first and final draft. I'm almost sorry that we lost this.
Mm.
In the first draft, after the unnamed old-timer is wondering out loud as he builds the coffin if the heat of summer is driving men to murder each other in the streets, he rhetorically repeats this question to the coffin that he's building, unaware that Drum has snuck up behind him to answer in a ghostly voice, "No," which gives the old-timer a start. Now, in the final draft, it's the old-timer's mock prayer that sets Krieger off, but in the first draft, it's that sets him off, and what could we have had both? I kind of like that.
It is very funny.
Now, we don't play the name game too much on Gene-ology, but Krieger's name fired a synapse in my brain. I mean, hey, something had to eventually. Because I seem to remember that, this is related to an old German name derived from the word for war.
Mm.
So according to Wikipedia, and now Wikipedia spells it Krieg.
Mm-hmm.
Gene's script spells the name Kreiger, but Wikipedia says the Krieg surname comes from the Middle High German word Krieger, meaning warrior or soldier. However, some instances of this name are no doubt derived from the word Krieg, which means obstinate or cantankerous.
Okay.
And then I remembered we were going to hear Gene use this name again. The Kriegs, the mutant bad guys in the second Dylan Hunt pilot, Planet Earth. They are kind of like proto-motion picture Klingons doing a proto-Mad Max thing.
Okay.
In this pilot that Gene will write and produce in the early 70s, it's the second attempt at doing Genesis 2 and the Dylan Hunt story. It's the first one that stars John Saxon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think either of these usages is a coincidence. Gene is making a very specific choice here.
That's interesting. Yeah, but it occurred to me after the fact. It was like Krieg. Oh, I just thought of the word blitzkrieg, like lightning war. I'm like, okay, all right, that's interesting.
Now, when Krieger knocks out one of the windows of Hickey's store to kill Willis's brother, I'm guessing he's probably not going to cover the damage to the window.
Nah.
He just doesn't seem like the type to offer, and it seems like if you try to hand him an invoice for the damages, he's going to stick a gun in your face.
Right.
I like that our act out moment at the end of Act 1 is kind of quiet. It's not an obvious cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Drum musing that maybe Krieger will be good for the town after all. But this actually says a lot because it makes me feel like Drum has seen this play out before.
Hmm.
And he knows that the folks in town are going to have to learn this the hard way. Sometimes it seems like this is the only way people learn this lesson.
Right.
And, unfortunately, someone else has to die before we get there.
Right.
Going into Act 2, Krieger's all like, she has a great deal to fear. She's an evil woman. Cue the Electric Light Orchestra. I'm sorry, I cannot help it.
Evil woman. No, you weren't the only one.
Okay, good. I'm glad it's not me. This means we can harmonize.
Yep. Sounds good. Hard to sing ELO by yourself. You got to have at least one buddy singing with you.
Yeah, and, preferably like 12.
Right. I'm going to have a little more to say in discussion, mostly because Krieger made me have big mad, for want of better terminology. This is a villain that I know too well. There are few things that make my blood boil more than someone acting like they have the pretense of righteousness when they are so clearly not and doing unjust and harmful things to others in the name of their quote-unquote righteousness. Yeah, there are a few things that make me angrier than that. So, but I'll save that for discussion. But good villain here to stir up this kind of anger within me. And also the fact that I can imagine him as Pruneface from Dick Tracy is very helpful in that as well.
There's a lot of funsies happening in Act 2.
Yeah.
Because everything really seems to come home to roost very heavily in the second half of the show.
Right.
It almost feels like this episode is patterned after our podcast. We're getting the fun stuff in part 1, and then the next part, we got to get serious.
Right. It is a 1-2 punch, for sure.
I do have this to say about the very last scene. Apparently, everyone is waiting for Nora to justify wanting someone to buy her a drink. I wouldn't doubt she needs one after everything that's happened.
Everyone needs a drink. Big Ed needs to just say, hey.
It's on the house.
It's on the house today.
Yeah. Why is anyone even questioning this? Get the lady a drink, help her pack, and get the hell out of that town, because I don't think she wants to stay here.
I would want to be rid of the town if it were me.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. I really wish we could find this episode on film because I want to think this is vaulted somewhere. I mean, Screen Gems was part of Columbia, but this was produced by Goodson Todman Productions, which, has a huge library of game shows. And there is a game show network that keeps playing old stuff of theirs. So there's a vault somewhere. I would like to think this is still in it.
I hope so. I would really love to see this.
Ashley, I sense you have things to say about this episode. I am going to stand back and let you exhale some phrases here. I have a feeling we may be thinking the same things, but you know what? Go for it.
All right. Well, not to put too fine a timestamp on this, but goodness gracious, this seems really prescient for, when was this, 1958?
Yeah. I would like to know when Gene patented the time machine in between writing TV scripts.
Truly, because, let's see, just shy of 70 years later, I mean, this script feels like it could have been written today.
This feels like it was written last week.
Truly.
About today. Yeah.
Truly.
Which is depressing because it means that, to quote Battlestar Galactica, all of this has happened before. And damn it, it's going to keep happening again.
Related, one of my professors in college, she was both my Star Wars and my Star Trek professor, Dr. Amy H. Sturgis. She said that she's always been team why not both? Because some people think you have to choose. I don't think you have to choose. She said that Star Wars appealed to her as a historian because if you look at history as a whole, because her PhD is in intellectual history, which is the history of ideas. So if you look at history as a whole, you can see certain kinds of cycles being repeated throughout human history. They are different flavors of old arguments. And so she's like, Star Wars appeals to me as a historian because I can see, things that apparently were happening in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away also mirror our own human history. She said, but I love Star Trek because it gives me hope that we can be better than that. And we can look at human history and see that, well, yes, we are still struggling to break out of certain patterns. We are improving as a whole in certain areas. For as much war and horrible things that are going on today, we are living in the most peaceful era in human history, as far as we can tell as historians. So, all that being said, I am both frustrated that we read this script from 1958 and it reads like we could have easily written this last week and changed nothing. Because we're still dealing with this kind of person like Krieger who is masquerading. And I'm just going to say this is masquerading. This is not justice. This is not, his choice of weapon is the Bible. But I can tell you right now, as a Christian, as someone who reads the Bible and takes it seriously, this man is quoting stuff that is not in the Bible. Like, it's written as a quote, but it's his own interpretation. It's written as a quote in the script, I should say. I should clarify. But it's him saying something that sounds scripture-ish that is not in scripture. He's saying it with the tone of authority, like he is quoting from the Bible, and he is not. It's just his own take on whatever. He reminds me so much of a character in the cartoon The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest from the late 90s. That's like, Gargoyles is the reason I have 2 English degrees. Johnny Quest is the reason I have a master's in science fiction. But in that show, there was a recurring villain who was like a cult leader. And I every time Krieger spoke in this script, I wanted to say, thus it is written in the Book of Rage, because that he just sounded like Ezekiel Rage, which is that character in the cult leader character in Johnny Quest. So, I just was fuming every time this guy spoke, and the way that he treats other people, the audacity to say, may I say a prayer over this man that I just killed because, he was unrighteous or what. How is killing him righteous? It's not. And thus I threw the metaphorical script in the air. Okay. Anyway, there's just so much more of this like this. And throughout the script, his treatment of Nora, like in particular, like, you make a point of Jeff saying, this is not a law issue. Nora's not hurting anyone. That your disagreements with her are not a law issue. And you see right there, like, oh, no, I'm making it my issue because whatever I say is the law.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to take a deep breath and pause. Earl, would you like the soapbox? I'll take a step off. You go, you get on.
Oh, that's a dangerous thing to hand me right now.
Uh-huh.
But I will start out with something that maybe should have been in observations. Every time there's a Western, we run into this a few times, when trouble rolls into town under the guise of law and order, is supposedly with a reputation of clearing up the last town they were in, why does no one ever ask, why didn't they stay there? This reminds me of Cobb's takedown of the Denvers brothers in Whiplash. They're the big men in town. Why leave town? The same thing here. If Krieger brought law and order to the last town where he set up shop, why leave it?
Right. Did he, who did he leave in charge?
Yeah.
Or was he tossed out? Or did he just kill everybody in town?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is the same answer to both questions. They did not leave under their own power. The locals probably got sick of them and drove them out. Why does no one ever think of this in these stories?
Right. My thought is, did they leave a deputy, for want of better terminology, in charge? Or did they get thrown out? Did everybody leave? Or with this guy, I would ask the question, did he just kill everybody in town?
Yeah.
He's rolling up like he's the fracking Terminator.
Because they don't think of it, because they don't think of that question, these people wind up with a self-appointed law unto himself.
Yeah.
So stop me if you've heard this one, because it sounds a little familiar. Man comes into town, says he'll clean the place up, impose order. He'll make it safe. Then, lo and behold, he's actually the problem that makes it unsafe. And he's probably wrapped himself in equal parts, patriotism or, this desire for law and order. And the Old Testament, always the Old Testament, with the smiting and so on. And proclaims himself to be the cure to all ills. But, hey, you'll need to pay him. Might need to pay him a lot. Almost like he's running a racket. Hey, why don't you just give him some stuff? He's also going to tell you what to believe, how hard to believe it, how to behave, how to dress. He's going to do it at the point of a gun. Another thing he's going to do at the point of a gun, make sure you don't have a gun to point at him. Now, also, you can't question him. You can't make plans to remove him from the office no one really asked him to occupy because, again, he will respond with deadly force. His word is law, and you'll like it or die. Because he won't be alone. He'll appoint enforcers. And they'll have toadies who bend the knee, kiss the ring, pay the tributes, and rat out their neighbors or maybe even their own family to stay in the good graces of he who is now an unquestioned power. He'll invent emergencies of his own creation, though, of course, it's never his fault. He'll use that to expand his power and hang on to it indefinitely because he alone can fix it. Sorry, I get a little off track. All this to say, I'm glad Krieger is a fictional character in a made-up story about the Old West, because, man, wouldn't it just be a mess if there was really somebody like that?
Huh. Yeah, about that. Anyway.
I do feel like Gene is, without even quoting it, without making any of his characters say it, he's referencing a very famous quote from Benjamin Franklin here. The Franklin quote in question is, of course, everyone probably knows this, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. These townsfolk, against Drum's advice from the start, do precisely that. But maybe the rot has already set in, because even before Krieger shows up and, says I'm in charge, no one really bats an eye at Willis's death, when that really should have been the first warning sign.
Lucius even says, who do we think?
Yeah.
Man, that's cold.
Phrasing? Yeah.
Was he saying it facetiously because Willis was not an especially liked person, or was Willis really that bad?
Yeah. But the line that I find really chilling later? Little Joey Drum playing in the street, and his father's trying to hustle him back into the newspaper office before stuff starts going down. And he says, I bet there's going to be another shooting.
Yeah, this, how common is it in this town?
What has this child seen?
Yeah, good grief.
That bothered me. And it's only when Krieger installs himself as the sole arbiter of what is or isn't sin that everyone starts shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Well, almost everyone. Not Stoker. Stoker buys in real early.
Yeah. He's pretty, Stoker is the guy that runs the mine.
Yeah.
Correct? He's thinking, more people, because, law and order brings more people bring more business. Ergo, it's all about what's going in my pocket. And this seems like a fast track to do it.
Yeah, there are two lines that really give away where Stoker stands on this. We know he's a God-fearing man that can handle a gun. We could look till glory day and not beat that combination.
Oh my gosh. Wouldn't it throw up?
And later, Stoker admiringly says, Krieger's a man that knows sin when he sees it. Just one problem. Everybody sees it differently, whether they want to admit it or not. There's different points along that spectrum. You know, there's the Old Testament flavor of sin, which is like wearing certain fabrics, which brings us back again to the smiting. And then there's the New Testament flavor, which allows for forgiveness. And I'm fairly certain I have read the Kurt Vonnegut quote before on this show about how he would prefer to see the Sermon on the Mount in public places rather than the Ten Commandments. But he's not holding his breath for this to happen.
Right.
And that's always the fault line in the middle of these things. You know, conformity versus flexibility. Rigid justice complete with smiting versus the possibility for mercy and acceptance and redemption. It seems like this is never going to be resolved. And that means we have to remain vigilant for any future Kriegers that come along. You know, those of us who are not characters in a TV show. Ashley, what do you think here? What's your over-under on this? Are there any morals, meanings, or messages in this script?
You know, I think there are a few. I think this is a harsh warning against authoritarianism and fascism. And what does it mean when we, the people, just kind of check ourselves out of engaging with how to make our society work where it works for everyone, not just a particular group of people.
Yeah. Not just you, Stoker.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think, like, you have... I think it's interesting that you have three different main guys who are kind of rallying everyone to support Krieger. You have Stoker, who, you know, yes, he owns the mine, and he seems to be like, oh, well, I kind of agree with what this guy is saying religiously. So there's that. And you've got Hickey, who runs the store, and he's like, well, you know, law and order brings people and families, and it, you know, creates, you know, a good and safe environment. So therefore, more people means more money. And then, well, that's all you really need to convince Big Ed, who's all like, well, I don't care what this guy thinks about anything. More money means more people. That means more people drinking in my bar. Therefore, more money in my bank account.
Yeah. And until the bar gets shut down, and then it's like, oh no!
Oh no!
I didn't expect the tiger to eat my face.
Exactly. You know, have a big old glass of Fafo. Big Ed here is taking a big old healthy dose of FAFO with this guy. And so, you know, you've got three different guys, but like, kind of like the big summation is, oh, well, this will be good for our wallets, and therefore we should just let this guy do what he wants.
Yeah. Until it's not.
The bottom line is it's about my bottom line.
Yeah.
Until, oh snap, wait a minute, this is not what I expected.
If only there was some example of this from recent history.
I know, right?
To explain to people if they're not into Westerns.
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely... this was a cautionary tale in 1958. I don't like that we are living out this cautionary tale.
Yeah, y'all should be listening to Gene-ology, not LARPing it.
Yes. This is not what we meant with the Gene-ology home game. We just wanted to get a copy of the Whiplash board game. Come on, y'all.
Yeah, it's not LARP in order, please.
Nope. This is a kind of villain that makes my blood boil. I've said that already in this show, but anyone masquerading under righteousness and then who does not act with justice and mercy is not righteous at all. And just because they say they are very loudly doesn't make it true. With me personally, I feel like I have this pot of low simmering anger on in the back of my head all the time. And now if you know me, you know that I do not project as an angry person. I try not to give off those vibes because I am constantly having to fight that back down. I don't think anger is evil, and sometimes it's necessary to project us towards doing the right thing. When we're angry at the right things, that's what matters. And I don't trust myself a lot of times, especially now that I've gotten older and hopefully a little more wiser about when should I let that anger loose. It's part of the reason I've always gravitated to the Hulk and She-Hulk. How do you project that in the right way? As a Christian, I think about Jesus turning over the tables in the temples because...
Yeah, the money changers tables. That has always stuck with me, especially, now when it's oh, you can't do property damage during a protest. It's have you even read the book?
When the man I claim to follow uses anger in a righteous way, that makes me know that, one, that's not sin. And two, it's about how the anger is used. Are you angry about the right things? Are you using that anger to stop injustice? Are you using that anger to put those who are acting unjustly in their place? Are you using that to stop them?
I'm going completely off my notes here.
Okay.
And I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you think of how long it takes for Jefferson Drum to come around to the fact that he needs to act?
I actually really love the interaction that he and Lucius have at the end of the episode. Because I totally understand why Jefferson is angry at these other men in the town. It's you guys thought it was a brilliant idea to put this idiot in charge, and now look what's happened. The leopards are eating your face.
And you want it to be my problem.
Yeah. Why is this my problem? This is your fault. You guys did this, brought him in together. You need to take him out together. And he wants to wash his hands of the whole thing. And then Lucius says, well, what are you going to do about it? And he's like, I did blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what? You're not your brother's keeper? Whoa.
Yeah.
When Cain says to God, I'm not my brother's keeper. And God says, oh, really? You found out real quick. Yeah, you are. If you have the ability to help and do something and you do not act, you are just as bad as those people who have put us in this predicament as in the first place.
Yeah. Don't become part of the problem because, it's going to cost me too much to do anything about it. On some personal level or on some financial level. And yet that reaction of Drum's, it's very human.
It's very human, and I get it, and I don't blame him for feeling that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's the right reaction.
I was really glad that scene was in there because that's the little gold nugget right at the middle of the whole story.
Yeah, I was really, really glad that was in there because I think it's important that we see our heroes. Jefferson Drum, obviously, he's the lead. He's the hero of this series. I think it's important that we see them struggle to know what the right thing to do is, or how to execute good decisions.
Yeah.
Because I feel that anger and the temptation to be complacent all the time. And that won't fix anything. I mean, it took one man standing up to Krieger to say no more. And everybody else was about to be so dang shocked and scared that they weren't going to do anything either until like the one kid who everybody said was trouble said, hey, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that, they talk earlier in the episode, oh, Drum, don't let this happen to your kid. He's going to be uncontrollably wild by the time he's 20.
Mm-hmm.
But this is said by Jimmy's father. It's like, wait a minute. You're his father.
Yeah, bro.
Did you not have a role to play in this?
Yeah. And and it's sad that what it took for Stroker to wake up was his son getting killed by the man he put in power. When I'm reading the script and we get to the ending, it's like everybody, you feel the weight and the shock. I love that we don't get a bow put on the end of this script.
Yeah, there's a lot here because it just really feels like memo from Gene Roddenberry in 1958. To those of you in the future, think very, very carefully about who you put in charge. That's the message.
Yeah.
That's the meaning. It's not even hidden.
Okay.
Don't want to surrender the checks and balances that provide common sense obstacles to those seeking unchecked power.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect to try to legislate morality and have it go over well because everyone is in a slightly different place on that spectrum. And maybe this is really more me than what was actually in the script, but I certainly picked up on a hint of Gene saying this. Don't let organized religion and government sleep in the same bed. The result will not ever be good, especially when there are obvious signs that they are both leaning toward the accumulation of power. There's a lot of very interesting lessons from a half-hour television script written in 1958 for a fairly obscure TV Western.
Yeah. As I was reading this script, it brought to mind a quote a buddy of mine shared the other day from the Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor. Said, Jesus was not killed by atheism and anarchy. He was brought down by law and order, allied with religion, which is always a deadly mix. Beware of those who claim to know the mind of God and who are prepared to use force if necessary to make others conform. Beware those who cannot tell God's will from their own.
This reminds me of something a dear friend of mine used to say. He's a very outspoken atheist. He always questioned things like, putting the 10 Commandments in every public place you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Or in trying to set up something as the official religion, or laws that back up religion when the law, as Drum says repeatedly in this, the law is not here to point out wickedness. It is here to codify stuff and, make some very common sense rules about what to do, what not to do, what to avoid, and the punishment of transgressions. But my friend had a saying that he rolled out repeatedly, and it's always stuck with me. Why are we writing laws to back up God? Isn't your God almighty? Does he need that help? Or it sounds pretty weak to me. If he needs legislators propping him up. So which is it? It's always stuck with me, and it's not a new message. Gene Roddenberry is not the first person to roll this out in front of everyone. The problem is we still need people now continuing to roll this message out in front of everyone in story form, because apparently we're not getting it.
Nope.
So as far as what I found here, I think it's best to give Gene himself the last word. This is a line from the script. Jefferson Drum says this to his young son, Joey. That's the lesson for today. You may not understand it now, but I hope you will when you grow up. It's time to grow up. Special thanks to the Roddenberry Repertory Players. Our cast this week featured Brendan Bourbon as Jefferson Drum, Brendan Burnt as Krieger, Alan Simonis as Big Ed, Larry Nemechek as Hickey, and Max Tim as Stoker. Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it's also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Facebook at MissionLogPod. And please remember, your comments could be used on future installments of Gene-ology. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment.
On the next Gene-ology, Madame Pharaoh. Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Rand Hurl, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi.
We'll be back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.